It all started by watching Ice Age. I noticed how the films of that saga seemed to follow an evolutionary line, the end of dinosaurs, humans, civilization. And I asked myself, will there be another studio that has done something similar? That's how I found the famous Pixar theory, an idea created by fans that suggests that all Pixar studio movies are connected within a single universe, from the origins of magic to the end of humanity. Today, we'll explore it in chronological order. We'll look at hidden connections, possible clues, and why there are those who believe Pixar has been telling us a much bigger story than we think. It all starts with a simple question. What if the meteorite had never hit the Earth? In The Good Dinosaur, Pixar proposes an alternative scenario where dinosaurs did not become extinct and, instead, evolved to develop behaviors similar to those of human societies. They farm, raise animals, build, organize, and educate their offspring. But behind this simple story lies something deeper, an exploration of consciousness. Traditionally, in our modern culture, we tend to assume that consciousness, empathy, or complex thinking are exclusive to humans. Animals like dogs or cats may seem to understand or feel, but most see them as pure instinct, with no real emotional or intellectual depth. Pixar challenges this idea. The bond between Arlo, a dinosaur, and Spot, a feral human boy, is not based on words, but on shared emotions. In mutual care, in grief, loss, and companionship. Thus, The Good Dinosaur becomes the first hint of a world where emotional intelligence is not the exclusive property of humans, but a force that can flourish in any species, if the environment and evolution allow it. With this, Pixar establishes its first great message. Consciousness is more universal than we think, and can manifest itself even in those we least expect. Many years after The Good Dinosaur, we move to the Scottish Highlands, where the story of Brave introduces us to a new concept in this universe: magic. In Brave, Princess Merida defies the traditions of her kingdom and, on her way, discovers a mysterious old woman who lives alone in the forest. This old woman is a woodcarver. But not just any old woman. Her cabin is filled with figures with hidden meanings. Here, Pixar introduces the existence of an unknown energy that is not fully understood but can alter natural laws, transforming bodies, changing destinies, blurring the line between human and animal. And it is precisely this transformation, the queen turned into a bear, then the cursed prince, that reveals something fundamental. Magic not only exists, but it can alter the course of evolution and identity. From a more analytical perspective, Brave also plays with a powerful symbol. The human who becomes an animal still retains memory, emotions, and purpose. Could this imply that consciousness and personality can be transferred between species? In addition, the figure of the old woman raises a very interesting hypothesis within the Pixar theory. How does she get in and out of her hut without a trace? How does she create portals that open and disappear instantly? Some fans have speculated that these doors are not simple passageways, but advanced technology disguised as magic, or even an early connection to the Monsters Incorporated door system. This has led to a popular theory that this old woman could be Boo, the grown-up girl from Monsters Incorporated who has found a way to travel back in time looking for her old friend Sully. But let's be clear, this connection is not confirmed by Pixar and could simply be a wink to the fans. However, its very existence plants the idea that the Pixar universe is connected through time, magic, and, later, technology. After Brave, we make a time jump to a much more modern and technological society with The Incredibles. Here we see for the first time a direct coexistence between ordinary humans and beings with extraordinary abilities. However, the most important focus within this story, according to Pixar theory, is not just on the superheroes, but on the beginning of a much deeper conflict, that between human and technology. Syndrome, the villain of the story, has no powers, but he builds a robot, the Omnidroid, that does pose a real threat to superhumans. What's interesting is how this machine works. It has no emotions, no consciousness, no will of its own, but it is programmed to learn from its mistakes and adapt in combat. It does not think like a living being, but it improves with each confrontation, as if developing a primitive form of intelligence based on experience. This may seem simple, but it is a key point. We are dealing with a technology that, without having a personality, is already beginning to show patterns of evolution. It is the first step towards an artificial intelligence that will later play a central role in Pixar's world. Here the fear of what humans cannot control is born, and it is hinted that even the most powerful, the superheroes, can be replaced or overcome by technology. After having seen how artificial intelligence began to learn on its own in The Incredibles, we enter a stage in the Pixar universe where it is not the machines that evolve, but the animals. Films like Ratatouille, Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, and Up show us that something else is going on. At this point also appears a corporation that will be key later on, BNL, or by and large, a giant company that begins to show itself as a force in the background that moves the modern world, from technology to mass consumption. In Ratatouille, Remy is no ordinary mouse. He has a refined palate, a capacity for reasoning, and an emotional sensitivity that make him closer to a human being than to any other animal. But this is not just him. In Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, we see fish that communicate, that form organized societies, that elaborate complex plans, and even cooperate with other animals. Animals are no longer just surviving. They are thinking, feeling, and deciding. They are, in a sense, waking up. Up, although it seems disconnected from this line, also introduces key clues. On the one hand, we have Doug, a dog that thanks to a device can talk. It is such advanced technology that it reinforces the idea that the barrier between humans and animals is blurring. In addition, in both Finding Nemo and Ratatouille, one can notice a pattern that is beginning to cause concern: the presence of garbage. In Nemo's oceans, pollution is already affecting marine life. And although it is less noticeable in Ratatouille, we see rats that have been displaced by human activity, waste, and urban chaos. Little by little, the world is being altered. In Toy Story, we take a key step in this possible Pixar timeline. Here we are no longer dealing with animals evolving or humans developing technology, but with inanimate objects coming to life. How is that possible? Although it is never directly explained to us, there are several elements that invite us to think that what we saw in previous films, the magic, the emotional connection, the soul, has continued to evolve. And most interestingly, this new form of life seems to need neither incantations nor complex machines. In Toy Story 4, for example, Bonnie creates Forky from a plastic fork, movable eyes, and a string. He's not a traditional toy, but as soon as she names him and gives him emotional attention, he comes to consciousness. That makes us think that perhaps the magic in this universe no longer depends on ancient rituals, but that humans themselves, without knowing it, give life to objects through their affection and emotions. It is an evolved magic, operating invisibly, but still as present as ever. In addition, there are signs that the world is slowly changing in other directions. In Toy Story, the logo of the BNL Corporation appears on Buzz Lightyear's batteries, suggesting that this company is already starting to become part of everyday life, even if we don't fully notice it yet. Recalling what we saw in Up, where dogs already have collars that allow them to talk, it doesn't sound far-fetched to think that objects can also develop forms of consciousness, even if these arise not from technology, but from emotional ties. Thus, Toy Story marks a turning point. What began as primitive magic, passed through conscious animals and advanced technology, now seems to combine into something new. A silent consciousness, born of human affection and a world that changes without anyone noticing. Before moving on to WALLE, it's worth a quick pause. Many include Cars in the Pixar theory as taking place in a future where humans have disappeared, something that is said to happen right after the events of WALLE. But there are details that cast doubt. In Cars, there are automobilized versions of movies like Toy Story or Bugs, suggesting that we're seeing a parallel reality, where cars replicate human culture. So while Cars could be related, we think it fits better as an alternate universe and not as a direct part of this timeline. But of course, that's just a theory. What do you think? With WALLE, we take a giant leap in the timeline. Humanity has brought the Earth to its most critical point, a planet overwhelmed by pollution, garbage, and total neglect. No single company is to blame, but humanity as a whole, which for centuries consumed without measure. ignoring the signs of environmental deterioration. This decay had already been anticipated in films such as Finding Nemo and Ratatouille, where we began to see the visible effects of garbage in the oceans and cities. In this post-apocalyptic future, humans have abandoned the planet, taking refuge on space cruisers in the hope of one day returning. The most famous is the Axiom, the ship we follow in WALLE, where humans live completely dependent on technology and have even forgotten how to walk. However, there is a theory that it was not just one cruiser. Some believe that other ships also left Earth, but took different routes. One of them would have landed on another planet, which then evolved in a completely different way. That planet would be the one we see in Onward, a land inhabited by magical creatures such as elves, centaurs, and dragons, but full of human remains, road signs, t-shirts, musical instruments. The idea is that these humans, upon arriving on this new world, did not develop more technology, but learned to channel the latent magic of the planet. Over time, the humans disappeared, but left behind their culture and artifacts, while the native species adopted that legacy. Thus Onward shows a mix of modernity, fantasy, and nostalgia for what once was. And as possible proof of this theory, there is a mountain in Onward that looks strikingly similar in shape to the Axiom cruiser from WALLE, which could indicate that that was the ship that fell on that world. Another important element is how the artificial intelligence is presented. Unlike the robot in The Incredibles, who only learned how to fight better, WALLE demonstrates emotions: curiosity, loneliness, love. He is a little robot who collects objects, watches old movies, and longs for companionship. This suggests that, even without humans, consciousness can arise spontaneously in machines. And this leaves us with a profound question: if humanity is gone, who will inherit the world? For a long time, it was thought that Monsters Incorporated took place in an alternate universe, just as it seems to happen in Cars. However, unlike the talking cars, in Monsters Incorporated there are small details that make us think that it is not another world, but the very distant future of the same WALLE universe. Let's think about this. Humans have disappeared, the Earth has been devastated by pollution, and centuries have passed. Life has run its course, and somehow, it has evolved into new forms of existence. It is at this point that monsters appear. These beings have cities, jobs, transportation, social systems. They even have corporations like Monsters Incorporated. But the most interesting thing is their source of energy: the screams, and later, the laughter of human children. If humans no longer exist in this future, how do they access them? This is where one of the most intriguing concepts of the theory comes in. The doors in Monsters Incorporated are not spatial portals, but temporal portals. They travel to the past to collect emotional energy. And if we think about it, it's not so different from what we humans do today, using fossil energy. Petroleum derivatives that come from organisms of the past, such as dinosaurs. Monsters, in their time, also rely on an extinct race to survive, only instead of fossils, their energy is emotional. It is like a natural cycle, where the present is sustained by the past. This theory is further reinforced if we remember Brave. In the old woman's workshop there is a trunk carved with a figure of Sully, as if she knew him before. Some fans believe that the old woman is Boo, the girl who knew Sully, now turned into a kind of time traveler who seeks to reunite with his old friend. While this is unconfirmed, and perhaps just a wink, the resemblance is intriguing enough to consider that there is a connection. In this way, Monsters Incorporated no longer seems like a standalone story about funny furry creatures, but the most advanced stage of a long evolution, where consciousness, magic, and emotional energy have replaced what was once human technology. We want to make a small parenthesis to talk about films like Inside Out, Soul, and similar. These films are also part of the same Pixar universe, at least under this theory, but their approach is very different. Unlike other films that explore the evolution of the world, the advancement of technology, magic, or the extinction of humanity, these stories focus on the interior of the individual, on how the mind works, what makes us who we are, and what lies beyond life. So while they offer fascinating insights into consciousness and the soul, themes that have been key throughout this timeline, they don't provide as much visible detail from the outside world as other films do. We don't see social advances, technological footprints, or clear connections to companies like BNL. Everything is kept on the internal existential plane. This doesn't mean that they are outside the universe, but simply that they don't expand the overall map as much. They are more introspective pieces of a much larger puzzle. After reviewing each film, analyzing their hidden connections, shared symbols and themes that are repeated over and over again, we can't help but wonder, what if all this is not coincidence? From the conscious dinosaurs at the beginning, through the appearance of magic in Brave, the emergence of artificial intelligence with The Incredibles, the evolution of animals in Ratatouille, Nemo or Up, and the devastation caused by humans in WALLE, everything seems to fit. Even Monsters, Inc., which many believe took place in a parallel universe, could simply be the distant future of humanity, in a world where the cycle of life and energy continues its course, only now, with monsters as heirs. And yes, there are movies that don't add as much to the lore, like Soul, Intensament, or even Turning Red, but that doesn't take them out of the universe. They remind us that, in addition to physical and technological changes, Pixar is also exploring what it means to be conscious, to have identity, and to be part of something bigger. Of course, there's also another possibility. That this is all a far-fetched theory and that Pixar simply loves to recycle 3D models from their previous films. But where's the fun in that? If you think we missed something, have another theory, or just want to debate with us, we'll read you in the comments. See you in the next video.